Hey guys, welcome to my video. In this video, I want to talk about a lawsuit filed against the Pi network. I wanted to get this video out as soon as possible because I found it really interesting and I think it tells us a lot about the company. Some of the things I found out is that Dr. Feng and Dr. Kokkalis are actually married. The Pi network is also valued at around $20 million as early as February of 2020, and also that there's a lot of things that happened behind the scenes that many of us never really realized. This video is pretty much going to be based on the lawsuit filed by Vince McPhillip, and a lot of what I'm going to say is pretty much going to be what's on the court documents and also a bit of my opinion. And in the end of this video, I'm also going to do a bit of calculation based on a lot of the numbers given in these documents. To be clear, I'm still a very big fan of this project, and I think it's in the best interest of everybody for this whole thing to succeed. I think the Pi network has massive potential, and I don't think this lawsuit is really going to get in the way of that. But I also feel that the Pi community should be aware of this document and also the pending lawsuit. In this court document, Vince McPhillip is suggesting a couple of things, including wrongful termination, emotional distress, and also breach of fiduciary duties. Basically, throughout this whole thing, Vince felt that he was mistreated by the company in general, as well as Dr. Feng and also Dr. Kokkalis. It turns out that the three of them founded the Pi Community Company, which was incorporated in the Cayman Islands. This company is actually the holding company that owns Social Chain and also owns the Pi network. And in the document, Vince thought that there were a lot of issues among the founding members because of their relationships to each other. Dr. Kokkalis and Dr. Feng are actually married to each other, but they were having issues during that time. He stated that the marital issues manifested themselves in the workplace in the form of shouting, screaming, and also acts of physical aggression. And in return, this made it very hard for him to work as the CEO of the company. He not only had to work as the CEO of the company, but was also tasked with maintaining relationships among the members. In the document, Vince states that their issues have impaired his ability to fulfill his role as CEO by forcing him to dedicate an increasing share of his time to resolve interpersonal disputes and managing the resultant of hostile workplace. And over time, he stated that this is one of the biggest reasons that he suffered from emotional distress while working for the company. And this actually got so bad for Vince that he decided to abandon his duties in February of 2020 to take some time off for himself, which led Kokkalis and also Fan to freeze his bank account and also his access to the network. Vince claims in the document that these actions might be intentional or unintentional, and I'm not here to really say. But all I can really say is by April of 2020, Vince was effectively out of the Pi network and also out of the Pi company. And from the perspective of Feng and Kokkalis, this resignation could not have come at a worse time because they were trying to acquire more funding through something called SAFE. Now, SAFE stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity, and it's a popular way of raising money for startups. And this is because SAFE agreements are simple to implement by company and also extremely rewarding for investors. And this is because of features like discounting and also valuation cap. Discounting allows investors to buy up shares in the future at a discounted rate. The most common rates is between 10% and 30%, so basically if the share goes for $1 in the future, these investors with the SAFE agreements are going to be able to scoop up these shares at a fraction of the price, and in this case anywhere between 70 cents and 90 cents depending on the agreement. And a valuation cap pretty much does the same thing and allows these early investors to be able to buy up shares at a discounted valuation, aka getting them more shares in the future. For example, someone with a SAFE agreement will be able to cap the valuation of a company at a certain price, for example $10 million, even though the company is currently worth around $50 million. Basically, the idea here is that SAFE agreements is a great way to reward earlier investors. And this is also great for a startup because a SAFE agreement is not equity or debt, and it's only really activated when someone else in the future decides to purchase shares or stakes in the company. The Pi network was able to raise a total of $800,000 using SAFE agreements. The Pi Community Company was able to raise around $500,000 in September of 2019 with a valuation of almost $20 million, and in February of 2020 the company was able to do the same thing and raise an additional $300,000. And after the effective termination of Vince, the Pi network had an opportunity to raise an additional $500,000 through SAFE agreements. But the issue here is that they had an intellectual property issue that needed to get resolved or disclosed before they were able to receive funding. And to be clear, intellectual properties here refer to logos and also other marketing materials. This is when Dr. Kokkalis would reach out to Vince after Vince unofficially left. You can see this letter within the official complaint, but in summary, Dr. Kokkalis felt that this was a huge issue that needed to get resolved. He states that at the time, the company was burning through a lot of money and they needed the funding now. And if this issue does not get resolved, then the founders here might have to put up personal monies into the company. One of the more important things I noticed on the email from Dr. Kokkalis is that only about 100 million shares are actually authorized and issued. This means that at this time, the founders of this company should each have around 33 million shares each. I am assuming here that the founders decided to divide the company equally at the very beginning of the project. And although we can't be 100% sure, this is a very common way of dividing equity for a startup. In other words, at this time, Vince should hold around 33% of all available shares, and so should Dr. Fang and Dr. Kokkalis. When we take a look at the email again, it looks like Dr. Kokkalis wants to issue more shares if the $500,000 investment falls through. We can see from the document that the issue with the intellectual property did eventually get resolved, but it also looks like Dr. Fang and Dr. Kokkalis decided to issue more shares anyways. We can take a look at the document here, and it looks like they decided to offer up an additional 500 million shares for each of the founding members. And this is a lot of shares, considering up until that point they only had around 100 million shares in total. This many shares can completely alter the equity composition of the company. But for this, we can assume that each of the founding members own about 33% of the company. And if each of the founding members were to buy an additional 500 million shares each as stated in this document, the composition would stay the same, or 33, 33, 33. But for a second, let's imagine that Vince McPhillip decides to not buy any of these new shares. This decision would pretty much reduce his equity in the company from 33% down to just 3%. This is because there's now a total of 1.1 billion shares in the company, and Vince only holds around 33 million. We can take a look at the document and see that Vince did indeed decide not to invest into any of these authorized shares. And if the calculations that I have here are correct, this essentially means that Vince's shares in the company are now completely diluted. He went from owning about 33% of the company along with Dr. Fang and Dr. Kokkalis to only owning about 3% of the company. And in the court documents, we can see here that Vince believed that this was done intentionally. The whole thing was a ruse in an attempt to dilute his shares. The toxic relationship between Dr. Fang and Dr. Kokkalis was an act to get Vince out of the company. The IP issue wasn't really an issue, and it was a catalyst for them to release and authorize more shares. And finally, Dr. Kokkalis and Dr. Fang knew that Vince wasn't going to purchase any of these shares because of personal reasons, also financial reasons. Basically, the whole thing might have been a setup to kick Vince out of the company. Now, I can't really say how true this is because the lawsuit still hasn't been settled, but I really do hope that this whole thing works out for everybody. It would be such a shame to see this whole thing fall down because of this lawsuit. To be clear, we still have a lot of information that we still don't know about. I think it's too early to draw any conclusions about both parties. If all of this was true, why would they want Vince out in the first place? Are they following a playbook from Mark Zuckerberg? Or are there more to this story? I think we should be fine because this lawsuit was filed in July of last year. The Pi Network, as far as I know, is still alive and kicking today. I hope this whole lawsuit can settle with each party getting what they want. There's still a lot of additional documents concerning this case, and I'll talk about the demurs filed by Dr. Kokkalis and Dr. Fang in future videos. And a demur would be a response from Dr. Kokkalis and Dr. Fang's lawyers to these allegations. You can check out these documents in the links below if you want to. And I think these would be interesting documents to look over in a video. And I'll make sure to talk more about this in future videos, so stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. I hope you guys are having a great week, and like always, I'll see you guys again next time.